Hello. Well, in this video I'm gonna introduce you with my new game that I have designed, and it's called Innsmouth Case. It's a simple card game with a Lovecraftian theme in which you have to use some investigators to move through locations, collect clues, and do some stuff on those locations to prevent the Cthulhu from waking up. It's a very simple game. It's a co-op. It plays around 30 minutes or so. So, how to set up the game? Well, first of all, you have to choose your investigators from this deck, and you can choose what you want, or you can go random. So, for instance, I'm gonna take these two first investigators. You can play this game solo, but I suggest you actually use two investigators whenever you play solo. Now, what we have in these investigator cards is the name of the investigator, his occupation, and then a special ability he can use. Also, above the picture, you can see like a placeholder for a dice. Well, this is a starting skill bonus die that each investigator has. So in this case, 2. So you would actually set his skill bonus die to 2 and place it on the card. The next thing you need to do, you take tokens that represents your investigator, and then you build a town of Innsmouth. You're gonna place them in these spots here. You do that by taking these locations, they look like this, and you shuffle them, and then drawing from the bottom, place in each column and row one location, going from top to bottom and from left to right. Yeah, so when we have these locations on the spots, just gonna lock them down so they don't move. Then you will place your investigators on the location you want to start with. As long your skill die actually, the color of your skill die corresponds the color on the location. So for instance, Dudley Jones can go into town library because you see there's a green, or he can go to the town market because there's a green too. When you select your starting location, let's actually do it for the professor too, although I'm not going to play, I'm just going to show you how the game works. So the professor, let's say he starts there, or actually no, let's start on the same location. About this location you can see there's two placeholders for the characters or the monsters. We actually have some monsters in this game, so that's the maximum spots that can be occupied on the location. So after you place your characters, you're gonna take this clue deck, and then from this clue deck, depending which kind of a game you play, easy or hard, you're gonna either deal 2 cards to each player, or only 1 card if you're playing the hard game. Now in this deck there's 3 color cards. So as you can see, we have green, yellow, blue and red, each representing a 1 skill that investigators use. So the green is knowledge, yellow is lore, blue is willpower, and red is strength. And they have values here, as you can see. This is 3, this is 7, 2 and 7. Their values go from 2 to 7. So I'm gonna shuffle this, and then I'm gonna, let's say I'm gonna deal 2 cards to each investigators. Now when you get your cards, you have some limits on the number of cards in your hand, but those limits are based on color. So each investigator can hold up to 2 color in their hands. So for instance, if I would get another green, that's fine, it's still 2 colors. But if I would get a red, then I have to discard one of these colors. So either both of my green, my yellow, or the red I actually get. So that's the only limit with the cards in your hand. Besides these clue cards, we also have some relics in the game, and the relics, as you can see, have a double use. On the top there is a value, and there are wild cards, so they can be of any color. So you can use a relics. If I have a relic in my hand, I don't need to discard anything because relic just mimics one color I wish, so it can be either green or yellow. So if I want to play this 4 and values matter. So if I need to play a card that if I have to pay the cost of, let's say, 7 and I have only 4, well, I can use my relic too, because relic can mimic colors, so this could be 2 greens. The other use of the relics is actually they have this special ability. As you can see, this one grants me to move one monster to adjacent space. So that's how the relics works. So when you're starting your game, you're gonna place a random number of relics inside the clue deck. It's actually depending on the number of players. So in this case, I'm gonna shuffle my relic deck and place 2 relics in the clue deck. The rest of the relics you set aside. Then we also have to add monsters in this deck. As you can see, monsters have a strength value in the top left corner. This monster has a strength of 3 or more because it can actually reason in strength. Also, they have some effects, like this says when revealed, if there is already another cultist on the board, we're gonna play some Mythos cards. Now you're gonna take this monster, shuffle them, and put half of them into this clue deck. In this case, it's 8. I'm gonna cut this and place into the clue deck. And the rest of the monsters you set aside, they're gonna be used during the game. So when you have this deck, you're gonna shuffle it, and then you're gonna split it in 3 parts. I'm gonna cut this and take some cards from each. Okay, let's see. 9, 10. Okay, so each deck now have 10 cards inside. Now, if you have uneven number of cards, it's okay. You have to build the decks. They need to be close with the number of cards as possible. So you can go 1 up or 1 down. So you can have like 10, 10, and 9, or 2, 11, and 1, 10. Anyway, when you do that, you shuffle one more, and you're ready to go. Actually, we have one more setup to do. You see, this is an old one that we are preventing to awake. And he has a special Mythos deck that he uses. Now, this card says actually that we need to have 8 Mythos cards. And together with this Cthulhu, we have a special card that only he uses, because this game, well, it's still work in progress, so I'm going to add more of these old one gods. So right now we only have Cthulhu. So his special ability is basically is going to make you insane if there is too much monsters on the board. Anyway, I'm going to remove 9 cards from here. Actually, let me just shuffle. And these cards will not be used. Now the rest of the cards I'm going to take and place the special card of Cthulhu inside, shuffle, and then we are ready to go. So now to explain how do you win the game and what you can do during the game and how can you lose the game. So our objective in the game is to finish these 4 tasks here, one after another. So first we need to gather 5 of these investigator tokens. Then after that we need to get 8 or more green cards, 7 more red cards, then some more investigator tokens, and then some more yellow and blue cards. If we manage to do that, we win the game. But there's a catch. As you can see on the Cthulhu card, there is a little Cthulhu statuette there, and each time we finish, every player finish their turns, it's going to move 1 space forward. When it get to the space with the tentacles, we have to play 1 Mythos cards, and they are pretty bad. They can spawn monsters, they can make some location effects obsolete, and some other stuff. Now, what do we need to do in game? Well, each turn, each player has 2 actions that he can do, and he can do the same action multiple times. So these actions are, you can move from location to location. So I can move up here, I can move here. There is no diagonal movement, so you have to go to the adjacent location either horizontally or vertically. So for an action I can move twice. Let's say I move here. Now these spaces doesn't matter, you just occupy them as you see fit. So like if I want to move here, I can place my investigator here or here, going like using 2 movements. Another action you can do, you can trade. So if you're in the same spot with another investigator, you can give him 1 card and he can give you 1 card. Or you can just give him card and ask for him to give a card. So for instance, let's say I want to give Professor 4 and I want 7 blue from him. That's okay. We just traded. Another action you can do is search the location. So depending in which row you are, you're gonna take one card from this deck. So for instance, if I was in this row, I would actually take cards from that deck. So it's just simple. You just pull a card and you add it to your hand if you can, or if it's some, third color, I would head to this card, but this is actually quite good for me. Another action you can do is to fight the monsters. I'm going to explain that later. And the last action you can do is to actually do a task. Now, when you are doing a task, you can combine all the cards, relics, or these little investigator tokens if you are with another player on the board, on the same location. So, for instance, if I'm sharing location with the professor and I have like 3 of these tokens and he has 2, I can combine them together with one action to make this demand of 5 tokens. So these are the old actions you can do. Now I will explain in details how do you fight the monsters and what happens during the game. So during the game, as these Mythos cards play, let's see, all kind of bad effects gonna happen. So in this case, we have to discard 3 investigator tokens, and if we can, we get some mental damage. Now, you can lose game in 4 different ways. So if we don't manage to finish this task before all the Mythos cards are played, we lose the game. If both of our investigators go insane during the game, we lose the game. If 3 of our locations get corrupted, we lose the game. And I can show you how the corrupted locations look like. And if you see this hospital, it has a value of 6. Oh, I forgot to explain the investigation. Well, I can explain it right now. So another action that I skipped to explain is actually how do you use your cards. So for instance, if I'm on this location and I want to do this special ability and get one of these tokens, I need to use cards of blue color which have a value of 6 or more. So for instance, I can use my 6 or I can use my 7. Doesn't really matter. So I would discard the card, I would get a token, and I could do this optionally. I could remove 3 mental damages from my investigator if I want to do. This is something you can do optionally. Now, important thing is whenever you use a card that corresponds to your skill die. So for instance, Professor, I didn't put his dice on. I'm going to use this one. So whenever I use a green card, I can also add points from my dice to the card value. So for instance, this 4 can become 6 because I have starting value of 2. So Professor can actually do this by using card of value 4 as long as it's green. Now the thing is, whenever you use a card that corresponds to your skill color, yes, you also upgrade the dice. So from 2 I'm going to go to 3. And you place these cards in the same row where you are. So that's how you use your cards. The action is called investigation. Anyway, to get back to this corrupting location I was explaining. So I'm just gonna show you how the corrupted location looks like. As you can see, you flip the card, it has a reddish hue, and there's no more options to get investigator tokens from it. Also, this shroud number, this is called shroud number. The value that you need to fulfill to do the thing on the location is actually risen by 1 point. So you don't want to get locations corrupted because they also have a different option now, because before it was corrupted I was able to remove 3 mental damages. Now I can only remove 1. So the location is pretty much you lost its appeal. Now let's talk about the monsters. So let's find. So as you pull cards, you're gonna get some monsters. But let's say I have searched this deck. This monster was at top. Let's flip this back. Okay, so let's say this monster wasn't on top. I wanted to do a search action. I pull it and I pull actually the monster. So whenever you pull the monster from the deck, you have to place it on the location. Now, if there was a professor with me and I pulled the monster, I would actually have to move on the adjacent location. So something like this will happen. But if I'm alone and I pull the monster, I place it on the location. And now there's a when revealed action actually effects on the zombie that I pulled. It says I take 1 damage, mental damage. So I would have to take 1 mental damage token and place it beside my card. Now, if you get 4 or more of these mental damage tokens, your characters go insane. And your little skill die, no matter how many pips you manage to upgrade it, let's say 5, it's gonna get reset back to 2 when you are insane, when you have 4 of these tokens. In that case, you can't upgrade your dice anymore, and you actually have to heal your sanity to be able to do so. That's the only effect. Other actions you can do normally, but your skill die will not go up when you use green cards and when you manage to do some task. Anyway, if you ever have 2 monsters on the same location, filling both spots, that's when the location gets corrupted. Also, one important thing, as an action I said you can attack the monster, so let's see how that works. So the monster has its special die. This is the monster dice. And whenever you start your turn with the monster on your location, it's going to attack you. This is when you roll the monster dice. So if you roll something like this, you're going to actually lose 1 sanity. On 1 you lose sanity, 2 is blank, 3 you lose 2 sanity, 4 you have to discard all your cards from your hand, 5 you have to move monster to the closest location with another monster, so this actually can cause some locations to get corrupted, and on 6 nothing. But if I want to fight the monster, then in that case I would, together with the monster die, I would also roll a d8. So this is how the fight looks. I roll both dices, and then I apply this number to the monster strength, so 2 plus 4, that's 6, and I can apply my dice number to the roll that I already made. So I have a 2 plus 1, that's 3, which means this monster actually succeeded to beat me. I didn't manage to beat the monster. In the case you lost the fight against monster, you're gonna take 1 mental damage and you'll have to move from this location. So let's say I move here and I would take a mental damage. Now one more thing, if I roll something like this and I lost the fight, then I also have to apply the symbol from the dice. So I would have to discard all my cards, take a mental damage and move from the location. So fighting monster is pretty dangerous, but there are some things that can help you out. So for instance, if my dice is really upgraded good, so like if I had a 5 and I roll something good, better than that, so I can apply my dice to that, so that could be 10. I can also, if I ever had any green cards, it must be of the color of my skill, I can also add that to the dice roll, so now I have a 9 plus my dice, that's overkill, and I can, discard the monster. When you win, you just discard the monster into the discard pile. Another thing you can do, you can use your investigator tokens to reroll these dice. So these dice can actually be quite manipulated as you see fit if you have correct cards and if you upgrade it and so on. So you have to pick your fights basically. So that's how you remove monster from the board. Another way you can actually beat the monsters if you find some location like this. So as you can see in this constable yard, if I have a red cards of value 6+, I get the token, and I can also destroy a monster on location if its strength is equal or lower than the shout value. So for instance, I could actually beat this monster because it's only 4 and this location has 6. When you destroy monster, there's a difference. When it says kill a monster, it goes to the discard pile, but when it says destroy the monster, it goes out of the game. So just place them anywhere you want. So that's how you fight. And basically during the game you would get these clues, then we need to get these cards and other clues and so on. But what happens when we actually do the task? So let's say we managed to do the first task, we spend our 5 tokens. Well, when that happens, let's say We also use some cards during the game, so we have lots of these cards. Also, relics, when they get discarded, they go out of the game. They don't get back into the deck. So when you finish the task, first of all, as a reward, each investigator that were combining resources to finish the task gonna upgrade their dice by 1. So I would go, let's say I was on 5, I would go to 6. Professor, I'm actually, let's copy just the dice. So if the professor was on 3, he would go to 4, I would go to maximum 6. You can't go over 6. So we will just upgrade our skills. The second thing that will happen is all these cards in the discard gonna go back into the deck. You shuffle it, you split it again on 3 parts, and you continue playing the game. So you have a second chance, because another way you can lose a game if you deplete any of these decks. So if we like search too much from this deck, and use cards from it and then go like only few cards, there are some mythos effects can actually make these decks to get to lose the cards and you have to discard from them. So let me just repeat everything. To win, you have to finish the task. To lose, basically, if all the mythos cards are spent and you didn't finish the task, you lose. If 3 locations get corrupted, you lose. If you deplete these decks, you lose. And if both investigators go insane, you lose. So that's basically explanation on the whole game. And in the next video, I'm gonna do a playthrough of the game, because it doesn't take long, only 30 minutes or a bit more if you play with more players, but I'm gonna play with only 2 players and show you how that goes. Now, one more important thing is, when you are playing a game with 3 or 4 players, then we actually use the second side of the Cthulhu card, and you can see that mythos gonna come sooner, and all this demands a bit higher. Also, when you play a 3 or 4 players, instead of starting with 2 cards in your hand, you only start with 1. Everything else is same. You do add more relics, because you add relics depending on the number of players. So yeah, that's the Innsmouth case, and in next video I'm gonna play it and you're gonna see how it works. So thank you for watching, and if you like my channel, please subscribe.